Diane Campbell is our zoning specialist. We have Mitch Turley, our stormwater and code compliance specialist. And we have Aaron Walker, deputy fire marshal, does our inspections and generally helps us out that way. So, and then we've got quite a few people from Next Century. Who's going to be your spokesperson, gentlemen? Christian?
Yeah.
Okay, Christian, if you want to come up to the mic, you can either stand or you can sit at the table. Either way works. And if you wouldn't mind, for the record, the microphones out, they don't really pick up out there. So if you would sit down, speak in the mic and introduce to everybody that's here.
Can I also have Tyler come up here? He's with Civil Solutions, since we're speaking about the site stuff that we do. My name is Christian Wilson.
Yes, those mics are on always. So we have Christian Wilson and
Tyler Monk with Civil Solutions.
then we also have Robert Brown. You're with Next, right?
Yep.
And Randy Nem, contractor on site.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So why don't you just tell us just a little bit about your project, and then we'll start going into the nitty-gritty.
Okay. So the project Next is based here in Providence already. They're leasing some space down by the theaters. They recently purchased this property. They purchased 2 or 3 parcels of it there. And they plan on creating a little bit of a campus there. But we're going to start with the first one, which is at the southeast corner down by the roundabout to create a presence. It's going to be a 2-story office building. About 3/4 of it is going to be office space. About 1/4 of it is going to be some testing space, but it's nothing that the fire marshal should worry about. It's water. So nothing's flammable, it's water. They explode, or they try to explode meters, water meters. So nothing's catching on fire. Anyway, yeah, and we're gonna have it. We've utilized. There was an original plan that Civil Solutions came up with, the site plan, the parking, and we've kept that same plan. We lost a few stalls, but the building's not as big based on the occupiable space as it was before. So anyway, it's pretty much the same as what they had proposed earlier. It's going to be a 2-story building. And we made sure that we kept under all the height restrictions. We've kept all of the mechanical units in towards the center as close as possible, so you're not staring at mechanical units. Again, the layout hasn't changed as far as the fire department coming in through from what it was proposed. I don't know what else to say.
Okay, that works for now. Diane, will you present the staff side of things? Yeah.
So this application was submitted April 29th. The complete application was received on April 29th. The pre-application meeting was held on April 6th. Updated plans were submitted April 27th. Rob Stapley inspected the infrastructure on April 18th, and Aaron Walker, we have his review letter dated May 6th. The findings of facts, Providence City regulations and requirements that are considered come from 1085 commercial zone districts and site development. And we also look at the official zoning map revised to March 2021. The conclusions of law, properties located in the CHD zone, commercial highway district. Is that right? It's commercial general, right?
No, actually, it's mixed.
Oh, mixed use.
Yeah, it's mixed use. So that's, we can correct that.
Okay. And the applicant meets the requirements of 1085 with the following conditions. And I'm sure we'll come up with more conditions, but for now, we just have the applicant will continue to meet all relevant federal, state, county, and province, city rules, laws, codes, and ordinances. Approval by the city of any application or paperwork submitted does not alleviate the owner and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Province City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated.
Okay, thank you. Aaron, you want to just take a minute and review your comments?
Aaron Walker, Fire Department. I didn't have a whole lot at this point in time with it. Access appears to be adequate, like Christian said. As submitted, there may be a turnaround issue to look at depending on how the construction of the parking lot goes as these projects complete one to another. If we need to navigate trucks, down through that area. Fire flow is probably going to be adequate. Depending on the height of the parapet walls, we may have to have an aerial lane between the parking stalls. Looks like it's 20 wide. It's within the 15 to 30 feet. Things generally look pretty good. I suspect the building will likely be sprinklered.
It doesn't have to be. It's
Okay.
honestly just because of what it's made out of.
Christian, can you pull the mic just a little closer? to
Yeah,
you?
I normally like to and will, but it doesn't have to be just because, it's all steel frame construction and the size of it, and because you have a lot of access around it, so you don't have to.
Well, the type of construction wasn't, I couldn't see identified on anything I saw, but it was submitted to me, so I didn't know that. We always assume it's type 5 until we're told otherwise. So but as a type 5, it would be required. So knowing it's type 2, it may or may not be. So and we'll have to look at the hydrant placement, building that size there again, the required fire flow is going to go down where it's type 2 construction. So that may also be sufficient. So not a whole lot this time.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to review, Rob's sent me some comments, and so I'm going to review those comments, and then I'm going to let Max chime in on some things as well, and then I'll come in at the end of the thing. Rob says this plan does not reflect so Tyson, right? Tyler, sorry. You have a Tyson that works there too, right? Okay, all right. So Rob said this plan does not reflect the extra water main line that the developer put in over their lot line. Do you have it updated? Do you show that somewhere?
Are they talking of the one that we brought down?
Yeah, sorry. There's a lot of water lines out there, so I'm trying to think of which one they're talking about. Probably the one that we brought down the west side of the road. It was on the east side of the property, is that it was all subdivided out on that side. I'm wondering if that's the one they're talking about in that comment.
Well, he says, I'm guessing that's why they're showing cutting into 100 South.
I don't
So-
think it comes down that far yet. It was just coming down to service a couple of those upper lots that aren't constructed yet. So we do currently have the culinary water and the sewer going out the south side of the building, which is what then is shown on the plan.
Max, I apologize, but I didn't bring in the original subdivision plans. Is that the way it was that the number 4 lot would?
Yeah, I think the point anyways was that's why the city stuffed water and 8-inch water into this property is so that they wouldn't need to cut the streets anymore. And my understanding, again, I don't know exactly what got built as the plans got changed a little bit in the field, but my understanding is from Rob, there was a water line stub to the south off from the 8-inch stub that the city put in. And I think what he's saying there, the way I'm interpreting that is he's expecting that water would just be extended down to this building to serve this building and this pad. And yeah, and not cut into the streets, exactly.
Then he brings up the sewer. He says sewer should be able to gravity to the Amsource main line behind Dollar Tree. Is that the direction you're planning?
We have the sewer going out the south as well. I can talk with Rob about that and see if there must be a line over there that's usable.
Yeah. And then the stormwater discharge needs to release to the north. Where are you releasing it?
So we don't show it being released on here currently. The idea with these lots is that they would kind of move into a compound system that's going to be taking the stormwater from several of these lots, but we have not designated an actual effluent flow at this point.
Okay. Then he's also got an access paved approaches to Gateway and Macy's should be made, even if they are hard surface temporarily, because that's part of the whole mixed use thing. That whole area has to integrate. And it says he's also requesting a right in and out of the roundabout approach, so that we don't disrupt the roundabout intersection.
Okay.
Okay, Max, what do you have that you would like to bring? Those are Rob's. So what do you have?
Well, so let's start with that last comment that Rob had on the entrance onto 100 South. One of my comments in the preliminary plat phase is that if they wanted access onto 100 South, that it might be, it may interfere with the functionality of that roundabout. And I don't know, exactly how much traffic we're going to be looking at on this thing, but I think we ought to have some kind of either traffic study. Well, my comment on the preliminary plat was, is there any way we could combine this driveway access into the access for Tractor Supply? And I don't know if that's possible or not. Tractor Supply may not allow that to happen. But that was one of my comments in the preliminary plat. I don't know where that ever went, or if it ever got addressed, but I too am concerned about how this entrance, if it's, constructed as shown, how it's going to impact the functionality of that roundabout, and maybe not, with today's traffic there, but that's going to see significantly more traffic as we improve 100 South and as more development happens down in that area. So it may not be an issue today, but when you get all this area developed here, right now this lot 3 and 2 and all those others still need to develop. I'm just concerned that in the future that we don't want to create an access that's going to impact the functionality of that roundabout. That makes sense. So that's a concern that I've got. So I don't know how best to address it. Rob, I think if I heard you correctly, was suggesting a right in, right out only on that entrance. Is that what he said? Okay. That might be a decent way to approach it, although a lot of times enforcement of those are tricky. If you construct them so that they really can't turn left out of them, they tend to work a little better. But the way this one's drawn right now, it would be very difficult to enforce that left turn movement coming out of that parking lot. So that's one question. The other thing I wondered about is from a landscaping perspective, if I'm not mistaken, it still does require the 10-foot landscaping around the building, which we've got in most places, but not along that west side primarily, and then along a little bit of the north side. We're lacking on that as well. And I know that that's been a big issue for other sites as we've reviewed them in the past. I suppose that's something that we need to have addressed here as well. And then same thing that Rob did on the utilities. I was pretty certain that the preliminary plat had all of these lots being serviced off from the stubs that were provided into that parcel when Gateway was built. And I'm pretty sure that that's feasible to do that. But I guess we just need to verify that, because that would save cutting the street. And then another concern that came up in the preliminary plat, and it looks like it may be perpetuated here, is on Gateway Drive, just north of the lot 3 shown on that. I'm looking at the sheet that is labeled as C101, you can see an existing driveway approach off from Gateway Drive that, again, they're not showing a lot of detail on lot 3, but I'm just going to call it a driveway. The north end of the parking lot appears to have, a landscaped island there and a sidewalk, what appears to be a sidewalk, kind of a interior street looking thing. That does not line up with that existing access, and I don't know if the plan is to move that access or exactly what the overall plan is. Say that again.
There's some of the connectivity that was shown on the preliminary plat is being disrupted with this, with those trees that are on the north end of the parking lot.
Yeah, and again, I think it would be nice to see how this is planned to tie into the phase 1, and if I understand correctly, phase 1 is the apartments. Phase 2 was some kind of commercial type building. I don't believe we've seen a plan for it yet. And then, and when they label them as lots, I think those were also shown as phases, were they not, in the preliminary plat? So,
And then phase 1A was going to be lot 2. Phase 2 was part of the apartments as well. And phase 2A was lot 3, and phase 3A is the lot that we're doing right now. So we're actually doing the final phase, which my understanding was from the development that they thought that all of the infrastructure was in so that they could do the final phase. But I'm a little bit concerned that some of the connectivity is not in the way it needs to be in order to tie the 2 phases together. And I realize that these are separate ownerships. And I also realize that people kind of like to have their own space, and I understand risk management and all that kind of stuff. But this is an overall mixed use development. It's one big development, and it has to tie together. That's all there is to it. It's got to be seen as a community in and of itself, where you've got the residential that can tie into the office spaces, that can tie down into Macy's. And I'm just really concerned about, Ryan, do you have, is this in the packet? So I'm looking at the L101. I don't know if that's the plan you were looking at, Max, when you were talking about it. But as you can see, this was shown as a driveway approach on the preliminary plat into this parking area, or as an approach, but these 2 trees are like smack dab in the middle of it. So that's not going to work with the consistency of the overall mixed use site. So, I'm sorry. Oh, there it is. Can you see those trees on the north end there? There we go. And so let me ask, to follow up on Max's question based on this, where is the access on the Gateway Drive from this site? How's this site connected to Gateway Drive?
It will be as the whole development is built out, right?
Okay, so this is the last phase. So those other connections have to be made. Because it has to connect. That's what Rob was saying. That's what Rob meant when he was saying it could be hard surfaced. So Aaron, when you were reviewing this, were you reviewing this solely on this side, or were you reviewing it with the idea that it was connected through the whole, what we were originally told?
It was reviewed as its own site with that question in mind,
Okay,
because I just wasn't sure with what I could see. I didn't notice those 2 trees, if that was part of what was saying to me. So Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, there needs to be connectivity also. I think there was, when we originally reviewed the overall project as a mixed use, development, part of that connectivity along the west side, you might say, was part of what was considered. So, yeah, there needs to be some connectivity there, I believe, but it was reviewed as kind of a standalone, project.
And would you agree with Rob's comment that at this point in time, as long as it was hard surface that stood up to your emergency access, it would not need to be fully developed?
Right, that's correct. Yeah, to fire code, standards of 75,000 pounds, 20 feet wide, it would not as far as the fire code goes, as long as we've got, year-round unobstructed access in there. That will hold the trucks.
Now, if they don't have access and they're getting in and out, you gotta manage the dirt. At that point, we don't want you to drive through a muddy. It's nice to have them connected to a road. Do you have a plan for that? I mean, maybe that's the question. This is what this phase is looking like. You guys want to connect. I mean, your employees are gonna drive in and out. You don't want them driving through the mud. What's the plan? Just let us know that. What are you thinking?
I think that, so I have, to be honest with you, I've come on to this project. I could speak with the developers with the other phases and see what we can make that connection to be. I understand the concern with that. I don't have the answer for you. But I think that's the idea of the meeting, is to get your guys' concerns and see how we can meet those, right? I mean,
Right.
Obviously, these are all very important things. And so I would need to speak with the overall developer of all the phases and see if they had a game plan for that or how to move forward with those things. And I think that's all in the cards. So.
Okay, and to the whole group, the way this is set up, the way Providence City has it set up, commercial site plans come to the Administrative Land Use Authority. Once the Planning Commission approves the overall mixed use site work and everything. And then we actually just come in and make sure that what the Planning Commission approved is what's happening. And that's why actually there's a lot of concern about this connectivity, because that's what was presented for the Planning Commission to approve all of this. But Rob and Max and I can't get together and talk about this independently. We have to do it in an open meeting. So that's why I brought up Rob's comments today and Max's. We maybe have to figure out a little bit better method, but that's where we're at right now. So you're exactly right, Kyra. This meeting is to get all of the stuff out on the table, and then depending on your turnaround time, we will schedule a follow-up meeting and try and get, because believe it or not, Providence City really does want to get in the applications in and out. We have a lot of stuff to do, and to have to repeat applications over and over is not in our game plan. We do it because it's necessary, but we would prefer to just get you in and get you through and get you done. But we have to also honor the previous approvals with a site, particularly on mixed use developments where they do interplay with each other. The use percentages and all of that kind of stuff has to be consistent, even though there's different ownership. The overall development still has to meet code as far as everything. So the only one I haven't had chime in, and I don't know if Mitch has had a chance to do that, but Mitch, is there anything on stormwater that you want to bring up?
No, I really didn't see a whole lot of it yet. I never saw
And that's the thing that you said wasn't shown on here, right, Tyler, is the stormwater?
We have the SWIFT currently contracted, but it's not
Okay,
the SWIFT document itself.
all right. And I didn't see like your best management plan for this construction site. Is that coming?
That would be
With the
part, yeah,
SWIFT?
the erosion control plan stuff is part of, it's an attachment to the SWIFT document.
Okay.
So that would be part of that.
Okay, all right. So we'll have to have that for our next. When do you think your consultant's gonna have that?
I would have to discuss with
Okay,
them. It's probably couple weeks out.
Okay. All right, because even if everything was perfect, we can't approve it we can't get ahead of ourselves. We have to have everything in place.
I'm a little confused, but there's the SWIP and then the stormwater, isn't that for long-term detention? And then SWIP, isn't that for construction? Guess I'm a little confused.
It's both. The SWIP is for construction management, and the stormwater is for the long-term detention retention, but you have to show how this is incorporated into the overall development stormwater plan, and that's what we're not seeing.
Okay, so should they have a storm detention area plan for this somewhere?
So on this site, underneath that parking lot that's on the upper side there,
That's what we're gonna.
there would be an underground storage system that would take care of this building and the lot number 3 that's next to it.
Yeah, we just have to make sure that the way it was originally approved, that we're seeing that so that it all happens. Because part of the reason why that's really important is because this body is planning commission is administrative too, but the planning commission looks and approves the overall site. And then we have to make sure that what they approve happens. So if we aren't really in a position that we can make changes, we could make, okay, that you don't need 2 more parking stalls. We could maybe do something like that. But if we start changing structurally, or if we start changing traffic flow patterns, things like that, then we may end up having to go back to planning commission saying we need to amend the original approval. And so as long as we can stay as close as possible to that original approval, that's what the goal is. That's what we need to aim for, because that's what was approved.
Speaking of the original approval, so I was just going based on what was submitted, and they didn't have a 10-foot setback for a building there on the west side. Or is that going to be a problem?
Well, so what they did on their original approval is they carved out a site, but then the building has to meet the commercial site plan requirements within that site.
I know. So because if we have to make this building 10 feet narrower, that's going to be a problem.
Tell me what's on that side of the building. Let
If you
me
go to the elevations,
hurry and pull the code up, and I'll tell you what we're looking at while you tell me what's on that side of the building.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, 10 feet, 5 feet of that 10 feet can be sidewalk, correct, Scarlett?
That's correct, yes.
yeah, so we do have 5 feet of sidewalk there.
And you don't need to have it in, of course, you don't have to have landscaping in front of your
We've
doors.
we've got like a foot or 2 there, but it's not, we might be 6, 7 feet, but we're not 10 feet. And yes, I'm a little nervous about that. Well, so, coming over here, so this would be the elevation right here. So we have some windows, we have a little bump in, and we have a garage door and a man door. We also have some, I always like to try to hide the electrical panels. I didn't want those on the street view, so it's, yeah, we've only got about maybe 8 feet right there in the middle, but the rest of it, we don't comply. We do have some larger areas on the end up front. I kind of pulled that back in there so we can put some landscape in there. But yeah, if you're gonna require that, it's gonna require, the building's not gonna be as big. They may have some concerns with that. But we made it too small of a. How long is our building? How long is it? 170 feet long by 76 feet wide.
So, Frankie,
So which spot are you talking on
I
the 10
don't
feet?
have that sheet. Can you go back to the sheet that he stood up and pointed to?
Yeah, the elevation one. Sure.
Yes, please. Sorry.
That's right.
So the west side of the building is The one with the big windows, right?
Yeah, so, no, it's actually kind of mirrored. So
Oh,
that's the
okay.
east side. This is the west side right here.
Okay,
So, yeah, it's got a lot of windows. It's got,
could-
you
you
know,
could
the
move
entry
that.
here.
Screen that.
Sorry.
Fine.
It's, yeah, so, I mean, it's got a lot of windows along here. It's got the entry here. And there's that area and that area that scrunches right up next to that sidewalk.
where did you say there was a loading area or?
Well, it's not, it's a garage door. It's
Okay.
where they just bring their stuff in and out. So it's not like it's a freight loading area.
Right, but so you don't need to put it in front of that. You don't need to put it in front of that.
But, yeah, so we're gonna have a tough time here, here, and here with the square footage. I guess I'm asking, is what I'm asking, is there any way this authority can say, it looks nice, it's not that we're trying to get away with anything, it's just we're trying to make this built, I mean, we've got the patio on the back. We count that as part of our, you know, rooftop patio as part of some land, I know Logan City will sometimes count that as outdoor, space. Positive space, you know, nice outdoor space.
So here's what the code says. 10-foot wide minimum landscape area shall be provided around the entire building, with the exception of where loading docks, ramps, etc. are located. Up to 5 feet of the said 10-foot minimum may be sidewalk. The Administrative Land Use Authority, which is this body, may provide for an exception to this requirement if soil types make it inadvisable to have irrigation near the building. In such case, the required amount of landscaping shall be provided elsewhere on the property. So we really only have, we have very little leeway when it comes to that landscape, 5 feet of landscape.
We have to make it 5 feet now.
We provide landscaping in other places that kind of compensate for that.
Well, before we do that, can you adjust the parking? Are you right against the property line on the, are you as close to the property line as you can be on the west side of the parking lot?
Is there a requirement of landscaping buffer there?
Not on there's the overall landscaping, in the parking, let's see.
The total landscaping? Well, usually, sometimes they require against the property line, a landscape buffer along the property line.
Between,
Between the next property, so the property to the west of it. Yeah,
and see, that one's probably their 10 feet and not your 10 feet. That makes sense. So that's their, you're adding your buffer. And,
Yeah,
and
but-
because it's around a building, it's not around the property line.
so you don't have any requirement for right here to have any buffer of landscape?
So here's what parking areas. Landscaping and parking areas shall be designated to provide the following. Incorporate appropriate plantings that are in scale with their surroundings. Separate roadways, travel paths, pedestrian paths using landscaped islands and or planter strips. Define where the pedestrians are safely separated from the travel path. Excuse me. Reinforce wayfinding by emphasizing entrances and circulation patterns. Add aesthetic value, provide canopy shade, reduce radiant heat from the surface, reduce headlight glare, and add seasonal interest. When possible, preserve mature trees and other significant landscape features. When planted parking medians are used, they shall be a minimum of 6 feet wide, and planted islands shall be a minimum of 25 square feet. Low impact development is also encouraged. Then it talks about the trees. Let me get down to the landscape buffer. How big is the total square footage of the building.
Total square footage of both up and down, or just one, just the footprint?
Says where the commercial buildings are less than 5,000 square feet in area, a minimum 10-foot buffer is substantial. If it's greater, there needs to be a wider buffer. That's
Where-
between residential and, and commercial, but not between commercial and commercial.
Or basically 10,500, 600 square feet.
Let me zoom back up to the mixed use development, because if the mixed use development calls something out, it does say that we have to follow the other plan, but there are a couple of little exceptions for mixed use. So let me look really quickly there. Buffers, fences, and walls. So the buffers, fence, and walls requirements is to provide separation between incompatible commercial uses and to provide physical and visual protection between commercial and residential uses. I think our goal here is to have all of the commercial uses compatible because we want people interacting. The buffer is required between residential and non-residential. Parking areas.
Looks like it's probably about 3 feet. I think it's closer, but not 3 feet out back and through the property line.
And do you own the property to the farther to the west? Is that part of your development?
Okay.
If you move it, you get your, that footage, and I think because you have a few other things to draw and come back with maybe.
Yeah, you can. I mean, I guess I need to know if we,
How wide is that buffer, Christian? Because it says
it looks like it's about 3 feet buffer up on between the curb. The reason I
the
say
curb
that,
and the west property line.
yeah, the reason I say that is because these are typically 9 feet wide. And so I'm thinking the average there is probably that's about 3 feet. These are about 2 feet safely, and that could be 5 to 3, or probably about 3 feet. That being said, I mean, we could probably have 4 feet, maybe here, maybe the average, we would definitely have more here.
Well, the
We
parking
have it
area
here.
that you've got shown there. I mean,
You said one was a loading area, and that makes it exempt.
Yeah, the loading area is down here, so.
the parking
So
area.
you don't need it
shown
there.
Is the parking area that's shown on the approved preliminary designs. So that parking area is correct. What you didn't take into account was the landscaping within the actual site of the building.
Yeah, well, what I was trying to do is I was trying to. It was proposed that it's be a 21,000 square foot building. And I did make it, well, I created this jog here and I created a jog there. I mean, I was trying to make it look interesting, I
Right.
guess, instead of a box.
This one's squared out.
Which interesting is always good.
I know. but
Can be.
It still. And it goes back to a box, is what I'm saying.
This does look like it shows a buffer of landscaping on preliminary plat around. It shows a buffer of landscaping around it. And then it's got the building area This is not in the packet, but it's got the building area in this hash. You can see the sidewalk area here, and then you can see
Oh, yeah,
this
there is.
landscape area around there.
Yeah, they didn't put that. Well, and they're also, they've encroached into the setback. I don't know what that box was, but
Actually, that's an elevation line, not the setback line. It's deceiving because it looks an awfully lot like the setback line, but it's an elevation line, so.
So how much do we need to have a setback for the sidewalk or the parking lot on the west side, the upper side? Or can we push that parking lot all the way to the property?
No, we can't go all the way to the property line. It says there's,
On the west here?
Here. It says a minimum, well. the
You had
one thing I'm not
residential
sure
ones.
of Is if there's a. That's the bicycle parking. Are you showing bicycle parking? Okay, because that's a requirement. That's a requirement that's different than the preliminary plat because the developer came in and changed to the newer mixed use code. And so bicycle parking needs to be shown. And
That's very easy. I just need to figure out.
well, this other one, it may not be as easy. And I'm not sure if this is something that is going to be combined throughout the whole development, but there also needs to be electronic vehicle charging stations. Okay, all right,
No, that's it. I mean, we can put those in. Mike,
okay.
we need to figure out how far we push up parking.
Okay, so the parking, a minimum of 10 feet of landscape screening consisting of mixed evergreen and deciduous trees shall surround the periphery of paved areas adjacent to buildings or property lines.
So we have to have 10 feet there?
That's what this says. But
So 10 feet to where? 10 feet to this top one, to the west?
yeah. This says a minimum of 10 feet of landscape screening consisting of mixed evergreens and deciduous trees around the periphery of the paved area. Let me go back and see what, because it also references. Standard. So if I wasn't looking for this particular sentence, it would just scream at me. No, I'm looking at it.
Well, we already have to delay the decision. There might be just some research that we'll look into and see if there's a possibility of what options are out there and
So
rather than research here.
it might be that you actually can, because it said standards for area, coverage, density, yard requirements, parking, and screening shall be governed by the standards of the residential, commercial, or industrial zoning districts most similar in nature to the proposed district as defined by the Planning Commission and as modified by the approved general development plan. Standards for public improvement shall be governed for the applicable ordinances. So 10.5, which is the other one where I was reading about the commercial zone district, which is what that was talking about, where it said commercial zoning, does not have that same says parking will not be permitted closer than 15 feet to a property line unless it is decided by the land use authority to be in the best interest of the city to permit parking to be closer than 15 feet. And so, and it says a business that locates parking in the rear